and welcome to the FreeFormKnits YouTube channel. I'm Axew Pattern, a knitter and crocheter, freeform ways of crafting and blood to the world of design. All the places you can find me will be listed down below this video. Thank you so much for stopping by and crafting with me today. So the date is July 20 something. I don't remember, as always. And I have quite a few things to talk about with you today. So we'll just jump on into it. I'm in a slightly different setup. I'm in the same spot, just a different corner. Hopefully the lighting will be a bit better. Kind of have this pretty backdrop we have on the wall here, so hopefully it'll be a bit of a nicer setup than just the white behind me. So we'll just jump right into it. Because it's a slightly different setup, I kind of have my stuff awkwardly on the floor, so sorry if I'll be, hopefully editing me will be able to piece this into making sense without me reaching down all the time. But I actually don't have a lot of finished objects this week. I kind of technically have one that I finished yesterday, and then I do have 4 others, but they're kind of very little and I won't talk too much about them just because they kind of won't make sense right now. But we'll start off at the first finished object I have. I'm very excited about. I talked about having to wanting to make another amigurumi toy for an upcoming birthday, and I did that yesterday. The majority of this was created yesterday, and it is this toy here. This is Axew. It's a little Pokemon. I used a pattern by Epic Yarns, I believe. I will have it on the screen. Epic Yarns, a free pattern I found through Ravelry. It just took me to her website, and it is just this really cute little crochet toy, Axew. I used worsted weight yarn. I love this yarn, acrylic yarn, in, I think, forest. I want to say lime green, that might not be correct. And then, I really don't remember, just these shades of green, and then a little bit of white. And then I used some sticky felt for the eyes. I crocheted this toy on a 4mm hook, 4.5mm hook. I always say 4mm. It's actually a 4.5mm hook. And the only modification I made to the pattern really is I didn't do the fingers on the pattern. I'm just remembering that now. I didn't do the fingers because I'm not doing that little bit of crocheting for that detail. It's just not something I want to do. And then the feet, I position them so it's like he's sitting down because that's easier for me to sew them on that way. And I actually filmed a whole crochet with me style video that I will be editing and putting on my channel. It might already be up before this podcast. I don't know. We'll see. But that's Axew, and I go into more detail about him in that video. So I will be sure to link that below when it is published. And that's Axew, and I'm really happy with him. So that's my one finished object, really. And I'll put him away. So the next finished objects, there are these 4 little finished objects that I created over the weekend. I kind of got this idea in my head and just ran with it. So I created these little cup cozies. So these 4 were knit using a DK weight yarn called Soft Secret, and this one was created using a DK weight yarn called Yarn Bees Must Be Merino. So all these cup cozies are knit the same, just with a different stitch pattern. So this one is moss stitch, basket weave stitch, a simple eyelet stitch, seed stitch, and a basic cable. And the reason I came up with this idea, just to create a little pattern with what I think are these 5 basic stitches that every knitter should know. So that was the idea, and I've kind of run with it, and I'm in the process of creating this little pattern. So I'm having a lot of fun with that, and yeah. Like I said, all of these were knit using DK weight yarns. I think I used an 8 or 9 with them. I know I knit at a bit of a looser gauge, just so to make them knit up even quicker. So I think I did all of these all in one day, because just really simple patterns to make. So yeah, that's that finished object, I guess. And that's all I've finished this week. I know, I think I said last week that I wanted to finish something. I think I wanted to finish that sock. I was knitting this garter ridge sock with picot edge. I haven't touched that, and I really have to. but that does not mean no sock knitting has happened, and I have to bend down awkwardly to put this away and pull out my sock blocker. So, on the process of socks, let's, everything's hard to reach. On the subject of knitting socks, I have a total, counting that sock whip I haven't touched, I have 3 sock whips on the needles, and that never happens. I don't cast on. I usually have only 1 sock and only 1 sock, but apparently I've casted on all the socks, and there's something new about this cast on. So we'll start with this one, actually, this sock whip, and I have 1 sock finished. So what about this? I have been wanting to experiment with toe-up socks. I've knit toe-up socks in the past, but I prefer cup down because it's just easier to cast on. I don't like the toe-up cast on methods that I think are the most common. Judy's Magic cast on, or the Turkish cast on, I think that's what it's called. I always get them confused. I think it's Judy's Magic cast on and the Turkish cast on are the most common toe-up sock method cast-ons, and I don't like those cast-ons. I always mess them up, and I just didn't want to do them. That's been my biggest thing with knitting toe-up socks, those toe-up cast-ons and the heel. Placing the heel and just doing the heel in general. I have, for my cuff-down socks, I do my shortcut heel, and I love that heel. It fits me great, but I could see myself reverse engineering it for toe-up socks, but I just don't want to do the gusset. That's really it. I don't want to increase for a gusset, rather I would prefer to decrease for a gusset rather than increase for a gusset, which you would have to do. You would have to increase for a gusset doing toe-up socks. But I came up with an idea for casting on toe-up socks, just casting on and just seaming close the hole, or where you would cast on. And so that's what I did. I did that for a previous pair of socks, and long story short, I'm just rambling. I made a sock, a toe-up sock, and this is the sock. So I just cast on for the toe, regular long tail cast on, and then once I knit the toe, I just went back and used my tail to sew it closed. And for this seam, I did a Kitchener stitch. And I will say that it is a bit bulky, but that's probably just because I do my Kitchener stitch rather tightly. But it works. It's a toe, and I just did a regular long tail cast on and just sewed it straight closed, and it gives the same effect as a Turkish or Magic cast on would. That makes sense. And so I knit this sock, and then for this heel, I just did a short row heel. I've never done a wrap and turn short row heel. I've done short row heels in the past. I used to do exclusively a German short row heel, but I decided to do a wrap and turn heel. My biggest problem with short row heels was that they were too narrow. They weren't deep enough. And as I was debating while doing the sock what heel to do, I thought, well, if it's not deep enough, just make it deeper. Like, with heels, most commonly you get down to, with short row heels, I think you most commonly get down to about 1/3 of your stitches. So I thought, well, if 1/3's not deep enough, just go deeper. It was a very simple thought to a problem I had had all along, and it worked. It looks great. It's perfect depth just by going a little bit deeper with my short rows, and I'm really happy with it and feel kind of stupid for not thinking of it sooner. And that's the heel. I just did a wrap and turn heel. Not my favorite wrap and turns. I don't like wrap and turns because you have to pick up the wrap. I know in some cases you don't have to pick up the wrap. Like if you were to do short rows, if I were to do short rows like on the back of a neck using wrap and turn, I probably wouldn't bother picking up the wraps. But you kind of have to pick up the wraps here in the heel because otherwise it'll leave holes. So it wasn't my favorite thing to do, but it did do it. And my corners, I did a little bit of a stitch correction, kind of to make the corners tight, so I'm happy with that. And then I did a 1x1 rib cuff and just a, I'm dropping things. My bind off was I knit one, I purl one, and then I knit them both together through the back loop. So that made a nice stretchy bind off. And so that's my toe-up sock. And for the second one, actually I should tell you the yarn. I'm using Patton's Croy yarn. I guess Patton's Croy is part of Yarn Inspirations now. Or Yarn Inspirations, I don't know, it's a new label that I'm noticing. Patton's Croy yarn in the 70s Stripes colorway. And Patton's Croy is a blend of 75% wool, 25% nylon. So it's nice. It's a nice sturdy yarn. It's a bit thicker than I think a regular merino wool. At least this Patton's Croy. I find Patton's Croy, some of the colorways aren't that extra thickness, and then some of them are. So that's interesting to me. But yeah, that's that sock. And then I'm not too far on the next one. I'm just a little, it's a mess in here. Just a little bit past the toe. And I used my cast on method for how to cast on with self-striping yarn, how to cast on perfectly with self-striping yarns for socks. I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel, linked up below, on how I do that, so that the stripes, I can speak, will match perfectly. So pretty happy about that. And that is that work in progress. So instead of finishing this sock and then moving on, I decided to cast on another toe-up sock, but this kind of had served another purpose, to be honest. It wasn't completely, it kind of was a completely unnecessary cast on. But I went to Hobby Lobby and got some yarn, and one of the reasons for going, I need more DPNs. I don't need more DPNs. I don't knit with DPNs a lot. I prefer Magic Loop, but I think that is partly because my DPNs, I have a lot of DPNs. They're like just a bundle of cheap bamboo ones, and I usually use them only for like really tiny circumferences if I'm starting something out, or if I'm getting to that point in decreases of a hat and don't want to put my interchangeable needles together for the decreases. And that's really the only time I use DPNs, but I kind of thought I would use them more if I had a good set of them. Oh, there it is. I thought I dropped something. I didn't. Okay. I thought I would use them more if I had a good set of them. I don't have a good set of them. And I'm kind of hesitant to invest in a good set of them if I'm not sure if I will like working with them. So I kind of took a chance and went to Hobby Lobby and bought, they have some DPNs. They're the Yarnology brand, I believe, and they're Alumina. And I was kind of hesitant to buy them. I just bought one pair of size 8s because I'm missing my 8s. I have like 2 of them out of 5. I'm not sure how that happened. So I decided to try them and see. They were discounted, so I thought I'll just try. And I'm pleasantly surprised with them. So I actually have them in a sock, and it's another toe-up sock, and I'm actually using worsted weight yarn. I'm going on all these different tangents. We'll start with the needles. So I am quite surprised with these needles. They're these, at first glance they look brown, but they're actually more of a rose gold, kind of like a really dark rose gold. It's really kind of cool. And they are aluminum needles. They are heavy, but they're not sticky. And that was my biggest concern, was that they were sticky. Because when I started knitting, I was using aluminum needles. And when I made the switch to other types of needle material, I realized how sticky my aluminum needles were. These aren't sticky. I'm not sure why. They are kind of heavy. Like they're not this light wooden needle, or, you know, like my Knit Picks nickel plated. They're not light. They are heavy. And having all 5 of them with this sock, they're loud. They're all clinking together, they're loud. Now granted, usually when I'm knitting, I have my headphones in listening to something, but these are loud. They're all clinking, so they're kind of loud as you're knitting them. But I'm surprised at how much I like them for how cheap they were and how easily I can get them. And I actually knit a whole sock on them. So I have part of the sock, of the second sock, that I actually just started today, in full disclosure, and this one, which I just finished today, and I knit most of it yesterday. I just had like 5 rounds of ribbing left to do and a bind off. So this is another toe-up sock, and I cast it on the same way, just using a long tail cast on and then seaming it up like I did for the fingering weight. But this one I actually did, let me take it off. Oh, actually, I'll show you on this one. Instead of mattress stitching, or mattress stitch, that's what it's called, mattress stitch, not Kitchener, mattress stitch. the cast on edges together, I just whip stitched them so I wouldn't get that ridge on the inside, and so it looks a little bit, it's probably not going to focus, it's not as clean a seam as the, here, not as clean a seam as the Kitchener, but I don't have a ridge on the inside of my sock. So I'm fine with that. I meant to actually try mattress stitching on the wrong side and then turning it inside out to see how it looked, but I forgot. So that'll be my next pair. But I'm pretty happy with it. It's just a worsted weight sock, vanilla. Nice vanilla knitting. I could probably get this done today if I really wanted to. And I did a German short row heel for this one instead of a wrap and turn. And I did the same, just going deeper in my short rows rather than fiddling with a gusset or a heel flap or anything like that. And I did that stitch correction, which is looking a little bit ugly on this sock just because it's such bulky yarn. You can easily see where I tried to fix the corners of my heel. Probably could have done a neater job, but oh well. And then I did 2x2 rib, and I actually did a sewn bind off for this sock, and I like the sewn bind off. It holds the shape. There's a lot of noise upstairs, sorry, but everyone's good. It holds its shape really well, and it gives some stretch, but it's not the prettiest to look at. It doesn't get the prettiest finish. Like, I don't know, but I'm okay with it. Okay, stick that in there. The yarn I'm using for this sock is Yarn Bee ID in the soft shell colorway. It is a blend of 80% acrylic, 20% polyamide. So I think this is the same blend. It's not the same yarn, it's the same blend as what I knit my Delightful Knit socks, my DK weight sock pattern out of. So I'm pretty sure these will weigh out pretty well. I keep catching things in my hair. I gotta stop doing that. So I just have to finish this sock and I'll have a pair. And actually, here's my progress keeper just to help remind me how many rounds I did for the foot. It's this little crystal on a safety, on a little clippy marker from Knit Picks. And I love it. It's so pretty. My progress keepers, I banged that into the wall. My progress keepers are kind of all scattered about, so I don't use them often. So I have to remember to put them in my project, my Notion pouches, so I can actually use them because they're so pretty. Okay, that's that. Work in progress. My last work in progress for this week is the sweater that I started last week. I think last week I had just barely started it. I think I was, no, I don't think barely. I think it was a little ways into the sleeve increases. And I'm not as far as I would like to be because I went on a sock tangent. But I am a little bit further. I've separated for the sleeves. This is a raglan lightweight t-shirt I'm making for the summer. And you can tell I've kind of gone in a different direction with it. So last week I talked about how I planned to fade it in some blues. I actually still have the yarn in here. These two blues in here, I was going to fade into this one and then into this one. I changed my mind. I'm going in a bit of a different direction with it. I am instead going to do a little bit of color work in it. Once I get past, I think I need a little bit longer. I know I need 6 inches past one of these stitch markers. Once I get to that point, I'm going to do a little bit of color work where it looks like, how to describe it, but like the gray will meet the blue and it'll like lock together like in points. I don't know how to describe it, but that's what I'm doing. It's just going to be a few rounds of color work and then I'll be knitting straight in the blue, and then I'll probably do the bottom hem in the blue, and then I'll come back and do these sleeves, short sleeves in gray. And so that's the plan. The yarn I'm using is Yarn Bee DK, which is actually more of a fingering weight yarn. I'm not sure of these colorways, I've had them in my stash for so long, but I'm knitting it at a loose gauge on a US 8 5mm, and it's making a nice gauge. And I've kind of been hesitant to work on this because I really want to place that color work in the right way. The piano's on. Place the color work in the right way. So I've kind of been, I don't want to go too far, but I don't want to go too short with the color work because I don't want it to hit me in an awkward spot. But I'm doing what I can, and I'll probably pick this up this coming week. So that's that work in progress. So I do have one more whip, and that is a blanket project I've talked about a few times, but I don't think I've ever shown it properly. It is a blanket whip using DK weight yarn held double, and there's just some yarns I had on my stash, this color palette that I really loved, and I just decided to work it up into a garter stitch blanket, and I actually have some footage of it, so I'll insert that here. This whip I cast on, I think, 150 stitches and just did a garter stitch using a slip stitch edge, and it's really pretty. I haven't woven in any ends yet because I think I'm going to cover the blanket in fringe once I'm finished with it. So I haven't worked on this project in ages, but I think I am going to make an attempt to devote a little bit of time every morning to it. I know a lot of people talk about doing the 30 minutes a day of knitting in their morning, and that's something I've always liked the idea of doing something like that, but I never had the stars align to actually do that. So I think I'm going to make a point of doing that this week at least, hopefully longer than that, but until that blanket is finished. I really want to get it off the needles because I have a lot of other blanket projects I want to start, especially my Cozy Memories blanket. I want to put a good bit of work in that. So that is another work in progress. In terms of acquisitions and things I want to cast on, I actually did film a little yarn haul earlier, so I will hopefully have that up eventually, maybe even before this video, I don't know. I have a lot of video editing to do, actually. There's a lot of content coming to the YouTube channel, so be sure you subscribe. And there is a work in progress, a project I really want to start, and it is a crochet sweater, but it has a little bit of color work in it. It is called I think the cropped crochet Mosaic sweater, something along those lines. I'll have a picture. I bought the yarn for this project, and I think it'll be a good introduction into starting to crochet some color work, because there's another crochet sweater that I've seen that is a little bit more intensive on the color work. So I think this sweater will be a good start, because it just has a little bit of color work on the sleeves and the hem. So I bought the yarn for that, and I actually show that in that yarn haul video, so be sure to check that out when that is up. I hear a lot of noise upstairs, so I think I'm going to sign off here, and I hope you enjoyed watching this podcast. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what you are working on, because I would love to hear it. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy knitting!